And one of the things that I found was a low-cost time-domain reflectometer, and or a TDR. It was called a cable scanner, was the trade name for it. And what I found there was that I could take it on as a distributor. So I went from a rep where I didn't have to buy anything, no cost of inventory, anything like that, to now I could buy the product, which meant that I had to take some of the money that I had made previously as a rep, buy the inventory, and then resell it. But instead of making a 15% commission, I was now dealing with 40, 50% margins. And because I had picked, and I won't go into the other details, I had also done this with some other products and worked very hard and never really had a hit. But in this case, I found this cable scanner was one of the balls that I threw up and it hit. I bought a couple of them and I sold them very quickly, made good margin. The company that I was buying them from, needed people to sell it in Chicago. They were feeding me business, and I was getting big companies, Allstate, Abbott Labs, Chicago Tribune. They'd call up and say, "You have these? We need them," and I'd sell them. And it was, it was really fun and exciting, and it was high margin. But it was a quick blip because they needed other people to sell it, and they quickly brought in and signed up other distributors that were competing with me, so the 40, 50% margins went down to 10 and back to 15% margins. So I picked up another product that was in the same area, in this networking data communications area. It was a LAN analyzer. It happened that Motorola was a customer of mine from my repping days, and they had asked me to help them find a LAN protocol analyzer. So I went to the #1 product in the market that was called the Sniffer, and I asked them if they would allow me to represent them or to sell the product to Motorola. I didn't say Motorola. That was one of the tricks, is you never disclose who your customer is when you're doing this. And they said, "No, we don't want to deal with you. We already have representation. All the business is going to come to us eventually." So what I did was I went out and found a good #2 product, not the #1, not the Sniffer, but an alternative, an up-and-comer. And I approached them. They were very interested to work with me. We closed the Motorola business, and I started to work more closely with them. So I got into this LAN analysis area, and I had lots of balls in the air. So I was still repping for telecom. I was distributing the cable scanner product as well as this LAN analyzer product. And all these were different forms of income, and balancing all at the same time. Pretty much a one-man show. Didn't have a lot of expenses. And I started to become fascinated by this technology, by this LAN data communications area, and started to focus on working with customers to understand their problems. Actually spent enough time with it and was fascinated enough with it that I was perceived somewhat as an expert, and I had the opportunity to be hired as a consultant and had some really fun, exciting ego trips back in engineering areas, troubleshooting networks for big customers, companies like Cisco. At the time, it was Anderson Consulting, now Accenture. They'd fly me into a city, and I would troubleshoot the network. They pay, a good fee, but it was a not what I ultimately wanted to do. It was, linear, meaning that you get paid by the hour for your time. I wanted to get into something that was a little more non-linear, not to use too many technical terms, like a product business. But one of the things that happened at the time was I was able to make enough money at this that I could bring in some more people. We could hire additional people. I took on a partner. And started to build another business, which was a consulting business or an integration business. So one of the things that happened as a result of this relationship with the manufacturer of the LAN analyzer is I started to build relationships back at the factory. And they would give me access to beta and alpha code. The salespeople would let me get in front of their important customers, and started to build a reputation that we could leverage. The product opportunity grew very quickly because the market was growing very quickly, and before I knew it, I was back again in a situation where there was a lot of competitors, a lot of people that were trying to sell these LAN analyzer tools. So I was no longer the go-to guy. So what I wanted to do was find a way to differentiate ourselves, and because I had this relationship with the factory people, the product management people, and even the development people, I got access to some technology. And this is where I had the opportunity to create my own product, developed a product called DScan, which was a overlay on top of the LAN analyzer. We're able to write a shell that had its own capabilities. We encapsulated the product, the original product, in our own, and we were able to sell it as our own product. So we kind of moved very methodically through this, where we were selling somebody else's to where we had now access to be able to make it somewhat of our own, and we were able to sell it as our own and therefore lock in and prevent other people from trying to sell that product. Attempted to try to sell these extensions, the shell that sat on top of the original analyzer, and create a data sheet, talked it up with other people across the country and even worldwide that were selling it, but never had any success. It was really a challenge, and we never had any volume that we could test. Maybe our pricing wasn't right, but something happened that was kind of fortuitous, and that was that the LAN analyzer was sold. The product line was sold to another company out of Minneapolis. The original company was in California, and they sold it to a company in Minneapolis. They didn't hire the development team. They had their own. They just wanted to expand their offering, so they bought the product. They needed to get their people up and running, and they needed also to jumpstart their product with a product cycle prior to getting their people ready. So what happened was they approached us and said, well, we need something to jumpstart our product offering. We'd like to license yours. And the opportunity was presented that we could sell them a royalty license. We'd get $75 a unit for every unit they sold worldwide. We never expected anything like that to happen because we had developed the original product, this DScan product, to protect our reseller business. So we buy the analyzer, put our thing on top of it, go out to the marketplace, and then sell it to our customers. Here's somebody, and we were selling maybe not even 1% of all the volume out there. Now they came to us and said, we'll give you $75 for every unit that's sold worldwide. Cost us less than $5,000 to build this, and they ultimately gave us over $200,000 in royalties. Doesn't seem like a lot of money, but at the time, it was a very interesting, eye-opening experience for us. So we took that 200,000 plus and redeployed it into developing another generation of product or another product of our own. So here we have the consulting business. By this time we had gotten out of the representation business, the manufacturer's rep business. We were selling analyzers, but now we had the chance to take more of the retained earnings, the profits that we had made through this bootstrapping process, and we started to build a new product, a fault notification system for these new networks that were being put on corporate network, being put into corporations. We had the opportunity to work closely with the same people in California. They had sold the analyzer. They took their millions, tens of millions of dollars, redeployed it, invested it in developing this new system. We took our tens of thousands of dollars and built something, and we again worked together. We became very strategic to them. They paraded us again in front of all their customers. We kept our price very low because it took a while. They came out with their 1.0, and it was slow moving. Every chance they gave us, we'd get in front and try to sell them our fault notification system with their primary network management system. We didn't know much about it because we had never really ramped up any sales operation. The last thing we did, we built it and then it was sold in a bulk transaction. But we learned a lot over the time. We were waiting for them to develop the product. And one of the things that was important is they kept the door open for us. The capability that we had of fault notification was something that competitors had built into their primary offering. So it was key that we worked together. They didn't want to squash us because we represented a good partner to work with them. So demand grew. They started to become more successful. We started to get much more demand for our product. The units started to scale up. And what we did was we started to slowly increase our price. And what we found was somewhat counterintuitive. As we increased our price, the units were also increasing. And my interpretation of that at this point is that it really had nothing to do with our direct pricing. It's just that we were so low, the point where customers were prepared to pay this, and we were just flopping around in here. We kept increasing, increasing, increasing. At some point, we knew if we got too high, they would, the customers would complain back to the company making the primary product, and they would have prevented us from, competing at that level. But we kept increasing, and the sales units kept growing, and it was, a fun time to do that. Developed a couple of other additional products, a network analysis product,